Before today's video, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest videos. If you want to see a case or topic covered by Paranormally Listed, then go to criminallylisted.com and fill out the questionnaire under the Suggest a Case tab. The theater is where imagination, dramatics, and ghosts take the stage. In the next 3 acts, we'll discuss 3 theaters that are so haunted that some of their best performances happen when no one is looking. Number 3, the Vogue Theatre. In our first act, let's discuss the Vogue Theatre in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. It's located on Granville Street and it opened in 1941. At the time, it served as a movie theater and a performance venue. The opening act was the Dal Richards Big Band on April 15, 1941. The first movie screened was I See Ice, and there were 1,400 people in attendance. The theater was purchased by developers in 1987 and was closed until 1992. When it reopened, it was exclusively a live performance venue. The ghosts are so plentiful at the Vogue Theatre that they even have their own hallway. Well, it's not exactly their hallway, but there is a hallway with plenty of paranormal activity. The staff calls it the Haunted Highway or the Ghost Highway. When people are near the hallway, they hear banging sounds and doors slamming. They have also seen apparitions in the hallway. Bill Ullman, who once worked as the manager at the Vogue Theatre, described his experience in the haunted hallway. He was locking up one of the rooms and felt the presence of someone standing behind him. When he turned around, he saw a shadow, but it wasn't a regular shadow. He said it was a 3-dimensional shadow. When he went out into the haunted hallway, no one was there. These encounters aren't isolated to the haunted highway. One time, Ullman was setting up the stage for a performance by Revolver, a Beatles tribute band. As he set up, he could hear someone playing the drums, but of course, when he looked around, no one was there. This was like the experience of one of the box office workers in 1996 who was working alone in the lobby. She said she felt something behind her and turned to see a shadow walk up the stairs. But the shadow wasn't attached to a live, fully fleshed body. It's not just staff who's been subjected to these encounters, but talent as well. In 2000, Arnold Robinson, who was a singer with the a cappella group The Nylons, got the feeling that someone was walking down the hallway next to him. He was so convinced someone was there that he called out, "If you want to hang out, that's cool." But he got no response. 2 main ghosts haunt the Vogue Theatre. One is a tall man in a white tuxedo and a black bow tie. The ghost doesn't have an interesting backstory, but he is seen around the theater. A performer even saw him while they were on the stage. There are more accounts of the other ghost, described as the dark-haired man. Sometimes he's described as having sharp or severe features. He appears to be in his 30s, and he is wearing light clothing. In 1995, during a performance of Unforgettable about singer Nat King Cole, one of the stars, Shane McPherson, saw the dark-haired man standing at a fire exit. McPherson was in the middle of the song, Route 66, and the ghost in his subsequent disappearance caught him off guard. It scared him so much that he dropped his prop, forgot a line, and completely stopped dancing for a moment. He said that the man stood there, stared at him, before dissolving into thin air. An employee's girlfriend and her friend, who was a psychic, had a similar encounter. The friend saw the dark-haired man in the projection booth, and he looked at her. She said she felt anger coming from him, and then he disappeared. These 2 experiences happened independently, and neither person knew of the other person's experience. Another employee, David Ron, saw the dark-haired man in the projection booth. Former manager Bill Ullman has questioned who these ghosts might be. He had 2 mediums visit the theater to see what they could find out, and they both said that someone had fallen, but they couldn't confirm that someone died or was even severely injured by the fall. Allman did his research and didn't find any record of someone having died or even injuring themselves on the premises. He does question if the dark-haired man was an employee, since he's often seen in the employee areas. So while Allman doesn't know where the ghosts came from, he just knows that they haunt the Vogue Theatre. Number 2. The New Amsterdam Theatre. For our second act, we travel from British Columbia to New York, New York. The New Amsterdam Theatre is located at West 42nd Street. It first opened in October 1993. It's home to the ghost of Olive Thomas. Olive Thomas was born Olive Duffy in 1894 in Charleroi, Pennsylvania. Her father died when she was 15, and when she was 16, she married Bernard Thomas. Like many theater kids, one day she went to New York City to visit her aunt and decided to never leave again. She left her husband and everything else behind in Pennsylvania. She supported herself by working in a department store. In 1914, she won the Most Beautiful Girl in NYC contest put together by painter Howard Chandler Christie. This led to a modeling career, and eventually Olive became a Ziegfeld Follies showgirl. She then became a dancer for the Ziegfeld Frolics, a men's-only show, and even riskier than the Follies. She also found herself in an affair with the organizer, Florence Ziegfeld, while he was married. In 1916, Olive moved to California for a silent film contract and married Jack Pickford. Jack was the brother of silent movie star Mary Pickford. In 1920, Jack and Olive traveled to Paris together. The two were in a volatile relationship with lots of arguing and partying. On September 10, 1920, the two had yet another fight after being out all night. There are different versions of what happened. Some say that Jack left the room in a rage, while Olive decided to drink an entire bottle of poison. It was medication for Jack's chronic syphilis, but it was a topical medication, and it was not to be ingested. Another version of the story is that Olive had difficulty sleeping and went to get something to help her sleep. She accidentally drank the medication, thinking it was a sleep aid. Either way, 25-year-old Olive Thomas drank something that night, and it killed her. Even though she died across the pond, it still couldn't keep her away from Broadway. The New Amsterdam Theatre is where Olive's ghost calls home, and there's good reason for that. It's where the Ziegfeld Follies used to perform. While it was considered a very over-the-top theater when it was originally opened in 1903, by the 1930s it had deteriorated. It was converted into a movie theater and remained one for decades. Disney purchased it in 1997 and they restored the theater to its former glory. It only cost them around $15 million. Around the time of this restoration, Olive's ghost decided to make her presence known. A security guard was working, and one morning, around 2 o'clock, he felt he wasn't alone. He saw a woman in a 1920s green beaded gown. She walked across the stage, blew him a kiss, and then walked through the wall towards 41st Street. This scared the security guard so much that he called the police, only for nothing to be found. The security guard became too afraid to be there alone. One day he saw a picture of Olive Thomas and said she was the woman he saw that night. Another event that further confirms that the ghost is Olive is when the staff, including Vice President of Operations Disney Theatrical Group, Dana Amendola, was sitting around talking about the film The Artist from 2011. The Academy Award-winning film The Artist is about silent films in Hollywood, and they were discussing the performers of the Ziegfeld Follies and how many of them became stars in Hollywood, and Olive was named. Someone argued that Mary Pickford, Olive's sister-in-law, was the biggest star of the silent film era. When someone asked what Olive would think of The Artist, a stack of around 13 DVDs flew across the room as though someone had hit them. They didn't just fall. It felt like Olive's ghost wasn't too happy about the idea that Mary was a bigger star than her, or maybe she didn't like the film The Artist. Either way, Olive's ghost isn't shy about making her presence known. Apart from that incident, it doesn't seem like Olive's ghost is dangerous or violent. Some people see her, others are touched, and sometimes she'll blow people kisses. One day a woman asked a staff member for a booster seat for her child. The staff member said she would get it at intermission. But the woman already had a booster seat when the staff member went over at intermission. She said that a woman brought it to them, but it was strange because no one on the staff did that. So it seems as though she's also a helpful ghost. Mostly, everyone in the theater tries to keep Olive's ghost happy. There's a picture of her at every exit for the theater. When you arrive or leave, you should say hello and goodbye to her. Olive's ghost mostly appears when the theater is empty and prefers making herself known to men because she's a bit of a flirt. The New Amsterdam Theatre seems to have found a way to live with Olive Thomas and keep her happy as she roams the theater late at night. But if you want to catch a glimpse, don't bother trying to stay overnight in the theater. Since so many people try to hide in the theater after performances hoping to see her, the staff does a thorough sweep of the theater before they lock up, so they will likely find you. Number 1. Theatre Royal, Drury Lane. The final theater, the third act, the climax of our show, is a theater with the longest history and a diverse cast of ghosts. It is considered the most haunted theater in the world. It is the Theatre Royal in Drury Lane in London, England. It was first built in 1663, but the theater standing there now was constructed in 1812. The activities that many people have encountered at the theater include having their wigs disappear, feeling cold breezes, and people hearing someone say their name when no one's there. There have even been accounts of people hearing scratching noises. But it's just not the sounds and the wind that people have experienced. As the theater has been around for a long time, it's accumulated many ghosts. One such performer / ghost is Dan Leno, whose real name is George Wilde Galvin. He is a pantomime dame, which is an old-timey drag queen. People sense his presence when they smell alcohol and lavender oil in the hallways. Now, the alcohol is explained by the fact that he was an alcoholic, but the lavender oil? Well, he wore a lot of lavender oil to cover up the smell of his bodily functions. He dealt with incontinence. Another former performer, Joseph Grimaldi, can also be seen floating in the boxes. He was a performer at the theater until he had to quit because of health concerns. He received half pay from the theater for a time, but those payments eventually stopped. This caused him to spiral into poverty. He died in 1937. His ghost can sometimes be seen visiting during performances, and he's been known to push the actors on stage. Some wonder if this is because his illness caused him to have leg issues, and he's seeking revenge on performers out of jealousy. Or maybe he's just trying to keep them on their toes. However, he isn't all bad. Sometimes he helps actors and guides them during their performances. Another ghost, Charles Macklin, has a more disturbing story. He killed another performer in the theater when he and the other performer argued over a wig. Macklin took a prop and struck the other actor in the eye. The prop went right through into his brain. While it wasn't intentional on Macklin's part, the damage was done and the fellow actor died. However, it doesn't seem like Macklin's ghost is bitter because he's called the prompting ghost. He whispers lines to the actors when they forget them, so he's looking out for the performers. Finally, there's another famous ghost who's an unknown entity. He's referred to as the Man in Grey. He can be seen in 18th century clothing, complete with a hat and wig. He can sometimes be heard shushing staff. He walks through the theater and disappears in the walls. During renovations in the 1840s, behind a wall, a skeleton was found with a knife in its chest. Some think that this is the Man in Grey. Although he met with a gruesome end, the Man in Grey is good luck for performers. If they see him, it means that the show will do well. There was one such case in 1939 when the entire cast of the show, The Dancing Years, saw him in the theater. However, some have argued that this was a publicity stunt and that someone was hired to show themselves when the entire cast was present. But this doesn't explain why other people have seen this ghost on other occasions. The theater is where creativity and showmanship are king, and these theaters have had their fair share of dramatics. Some people never want to leave the stage, and these three cases show how strong a pull the theater is for so many performers who never want to take their final bow. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. We also have a podcast about cold cases that were eventually solved called Criminally Listed Presents Into the Killing. You can find it on Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere you find great podcasts. But that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.